I am Jessica, and I am 26 years old. I work at a music store.
Jessica, could you help carry this over too?
The one calling out to me is Julie, the manager of this music store. I met her when I ran away from home, and she allowed me to live in a corner of the shop while helping out there. The reason I left home was because of my mother. She was a violinist who toured various countries in her youth and seemed to have a modestly successful career. However, when she married my father, she injured her wrist. Unable to play for a prolonged period, she fell into a slump by the time her wrist healed and ultimately quit performing on stage. Shortly after that, she became pregnant with me. My mother decided to raise me and started working as a violin teacher.
Jessica, you made a mistake there.
From as early as I can remember, my mother put a violin in my hands and trained me to become a violinist, as if forcing her dreams onto me. She was known for her strictness, and when she taught violin, her intensity could be likened to a fierce creature with horns. She would scold me harshly when I made mistakes, and her discipline was often severe. At the time, I desperately wanted to escape, but as a child, I had no choice but to obey. I felt hopeless, as if I had no other path but to become a violinist, following the road my mother laid out. However, a fateful encounter changed me. That encounter was with the guitar. When I was in middle school, I was captivated by a video I watched on a popular site on my phone. It was of a woman singing and playing the guitar, and I was absolutely mesmerized by her. Not the woman's singing voice, but the sound of the guitar captivated me. I felt a strong urge to try playing the guitar myself, though I knew my mother would never allow it. Then one day, my father, who had just returned home from overseas, brought back a guitar, as if sensing my desire.
Stop it. Why did you bring home something like this?
Naturally, my mother yelled at him for bringing a guitar home, but my father just laughed, saying it was a gift from someone he played music with as a keepsake. Then, he asked if I wanted to use it. I contained my excitement and pretended to reluctantly accept it. I took it to my room, immediately opened the case, and was overjoyed.
It's amazing, beautiful.
The guitar I saw for the first time was glossy and much larger than a violin. Holding it felt slightly big for my body, but it had a comfortable weight, and when I tried strumming the strings, it made a beautiful sound just like in the video. From that moment, I became engrossed in the guitar, learning the finger positions from scratch through videos and online tutorials. By the time I was in high school, I had learned to play it reasonably well. At first, I played simple music, but as I grew more skilled, I could play along with music videos, just like the ones I had watched. Soon, I wanted to play even more songs and upload videos of myself as well. However, with my mother around, I couldn't do anything flashy. I positioned the camera to keep my face hidden, leaned against the wall, and only uploaded popular songs everyone would recognize. Of course, only a few people watched at first. As I started uploading original songs, my views and subscribers grew, and before I knew it, a single video would garner hundreds of thousands of views within hours. People in the comments wanted to hear my voice or see my face, but fearing my mother would find out, I continued as I was without responding to those requests. As I kept posting, I eventually gained the nickname the Guitar Prodigy among fans.
Is this you?
Then, out of the blue, my mom seemed to have caught one of my videos and asked if it was me in there.
What? No, it's not me.
Driven by a desperate need to keep my secret, I lied, hoping to somehow dodge suspicion. But, as always, my mother was a step ahead.
I can tell by that scar on the finger. It's you, isn't it?
She pointed to the finger in the video. I followed her gaze and, sure enough, there was a ring-shaped scar on the middle finger of the right hand. I had the same scar on my own finger. She dismissed the idea that this could be a mere coincidence and went upstairs, returning with my guitar, pointing out that it matched the one in the video. I was at a loss for words and just looked down. Taking my silence as an admission, my mother smashed the guitar right then and there.
Stop. Mom. Don't break it.
I ran over to stop her before the guitar hit the ground, but it shattered quickly, and I could only watch in despair as she repeatedly slammed it against the floor.
You don't need something like this. Just focus on your violin.
She tossed the broken guitar aside, forcing the violin into my hands.
No. You don't understand anything. You've been forcing your dreams on me. I don't want to do this anymore.
Filled with disgust, I pushed the violin away. It slipped from my grasp and fell to the floor. My mother hastily picked it up, but before she could say anything, I shouted, silencing her and leaving her just standing there, staring at me. When I regained my senses and looked at her, she was glaring at me with a terrifying expression, her face like that of a demon. Fear took hold of me, and I left the house immediately. I used the wallet function on my phone to head to the next town, hoping she wouldn't come after me right away. The sky was already dark, and the streets were full of businessmen on their way home. Dressed only in a t-shirt and pants, with nothing else, it must have been obvious to anyone that I'd just run out of my house. Not knowing where to go, I wandered aimlessly around this unfamiliar town until my eyes caught sight of a cafe.
Music cafe.
There was some cursive English written above, but I couldn't quite read it. Only the words Music Cafe on the window stood out to me. Looking inside, I saw someone playing the piano, while a few customers enjoyed their drinks and listened to the music. Feeling drawn to the place, I walked inside and took a seat at an empty table.
Hello there. What would you like to drink?
As soon as I sat down, a beautiful woman spoke to me. This was how I met Julie.
What would you recommend?
Well, what about a fruit mixed juice if you're not into coffee?
All right, I'll have that, please.
With that, Julie returned to the counter and began preparing my drink. As I watched her out of the corner of my eye, I glanced over at the person playing the piano. The performance wasn't particularly skilled, but they looked like they were genuinely having fun. How wonderful it must be to enjoy something so peacefully, with such joy.
Hey, do you have an interest in the piano?
While I was gazing off in a daze, Julie placed the juice on the table and asked. Startled, I looked up at Julie, her smiling face warmly greeting me.
No, it just looked like they were having fun.
That's what this place is all about. The goal here is for people to play music joyfully, whether they're amateurs or pros. We even hold karaoke events and occasional concerts.
Julie spoke enthusiastically about the cafe's concept, and I nodded while sipping my drink. I hadn't known that such places even existed.
It's just that we can only do it once a month.
Why's that?
We're short on staff. If we had even one young person join, things would be different.
Julie smiled wryly, and an idea immediately came to my mind.
Could you hire me?
This is how I ended up being hired by Julie. After learning that I had run away from home, she initially tried to convince me to go back. But when I insisted that I didn't want to return, she reluctantly decided to hire me. Looking back, I realize I caused her quite a bit of trouble. One day, Julie received a request from someone she knew to help out at a rock band's concert for a big-name artist. I didn't know much about it, but we needed to take a few instruments with us. I was going along to help, so Julie and I headed to the venue together. The concert venue was a well-known location, and though we arrived early, there were already a few fans walking around outside.
Is this artist really famous?
I asked Julie, who was driving, and she gave me a surprised look before smiling and filling me in about them. Apparently, the band was based in the UK but had quite a following worldwide. Since I don't usually watch TV, I didn't recognize the group's name, so I couldn't quite grasp how big of a deal it was. Without fully realizing the significance of helping such a renowned band, Julie and I parked in the underground garage and entered the venue, which was immense and bustling with many staff members moving around busily.
Jessica, I think we can just leave them here.
Julie, who was helping carry the instruments, placed hers next to the stage, so I followed suit and set mine down as well. For about an hour, we went back and forth between the parking lot and the stage. By the time we finished, I noticed the rock band members looking distressed, and the staff seemed even more frantic than before.
I wonder what's going on.
Judging by the panic and the band members' visibly downcast expressions, it seemed like something had gone wrong. Even though I knew Julie probably wouldn't know, I asked her anyway.
Right. Let's go find out.
With that, she headed over to speak with someone who appeared to be giving directions. Watching her, I couldn't help but think how brave she was. Moments later, Julie returned.
It sounds like the bassist missed his flight and is running late. At this rate, he might not make it in time for the opening.
Julie gave a strange smile, but I understood that this was a serious problem.
Should we take the instruments back up?
The idea of lugging everything back to the car after bringing it all down was honestly exhausting. Julie sighed thoughtfully, murmuring,
I can't think of any bass players I know. It would be awesome to just use a guitar instead, but I don't know any guitarists either.
Wait, you can substitute a guitar for a bass?
Yeah. It depends on the song, but it's not impossible.
I thought for a moment. The venue was likely packed with fans eagerly waiting outside, and it would be humiliating for this renowned international rock band to leave without performing. Not to mention, there'd probably be a huge financial loss.
If it would help, I could give it a try.
As long as I didn't have to be in the spotlight, I wouldn't mind playing. I was nervous about keeping up with these big-name artists, but if it could solve the issue, it might be worth a shot.
What? Jessica, didn't you say you couldn't play any instruments?
When Julie hired me, she had asked about my experience with instruments, and I'd pretended not to know to keep my background a secret. But now didn't seem like the time to keep that up.
I know a bit of guitar. I just don't know how well I'll be able to pull it off.
Julie's eyes lit up, and she immediately ran over to talk to a staff member. After hearing the news, the staff member's face brightened, and they eagerly asked if I would perform. Then, they quickly took me over to the band members, who all started talking to me one after another. I wasn't listening to what they were saying and felt completely lost until a handsome guy stepped forward, weaving through the others, and grabbed my hand.
Thank you. Let's get started right away.
The handsome guy turned out to be Noah, the lead vocalist and apparently the leader of the band. I received the sheet music from the band members and quickly tried to absorb it, practicing as much as I could in the short time before we began a sound check. With only an hour left before the show, I threw myself into it and just barely received the green light. It looked like we'd make it in time. I was incredibly nervous, but as I looked out at the audience filling up with fans as the show began, I was reminded of the recitals I'd attended with my mother. Due to my parents' fame, I was also in the spotlight, performing for large audiences. I recall how nervous I was, but I also remember the immense happiness I felt when I completed it and was greeted with a standing ovation.
Don't worry about being nervous. We'll cover for you, so just play how you want. Your guitar skill is amazing, so be confident.
Sensing my nerves, Noah placed a hand on my shoulder as I peeked out from backstage and smiled at me. Feeling slightly reassured by his words, I took a deep breath and nodded. Then, the stage lights came on, and the audience erupted with excitement as the music began. Noah addressed the crowd, explaining that the bassist hadn't made it and that they'd be using a guitarist instead. He also mentioned that I was just an ordinary person and would be playing from backstage. The audience responded with a loud cheer of support, and the show kicked off. Initially nervous, I quickly began to revel in the harmony of the band's sound, experiencing a sense of joy and excitement that was entirely new to me. The 2-hour set passed quickly, and by the end, an encore chant echoed through the venue. I hadn't realized it, but I was drenched in sweat, not just on my forehead but all over my face. My t-shirt was soaked through.
Jessica, that was incredible.
As soon as it was over, Julie came over, eyes shining, with a bottle of water and a towel.
Yay, it was so much fun.
Great jobs. Everyone's saying you did amazingly.
Taking the towel from Julie, I wiped my face just as the band members and Noah surrounded me backstage. They were all beaming, shaking my hand, and patting me on the back. They genuinely seemed thrilled.
Why don't you take the encore?
What?
With the chant for an encore filling the air, everyone, including the staff, turned to me.
No way. I can't do that.
The thought of doing an encore by myself was overwhelming, and I shook my head desperately. However, Noah placed his hands on my shoulders, holding my gaze firmly.
You made this concert a success. Can you hear it? They're calling for the guitar.
I listened carefully, and sure enough, amidst the cheers, I could hear folks shouting for the guitar player.
But what should I play?
As much as the audience's cheers filled me with joy, a wave of anxiety hit me. I didn't know many songs well enough to play without sheet music. I hadn't practiced enough to keep a repertoire in my head.
Anything will do.
Noah said, grabbing a microphone and running back on stage, where another roar of applause erupted.
Don't worry, Jessica. Just relax. You could even play the Do Re Mi song if you want.
Julie held my trembling hands, smiling, and I couldn't help but laugh a little, thinking how impossible that would be. Julie laughed along with me. Thanks to that, I suddenly recalled the time I'd posted my own videos online. Previously, I uploaded several original songs. I knew those by heart, and my fingers remembered them too. As Noah informed the audience that the encore would be a guitar solo, I readied my guitar. The applause began, then quieted, and I took a deep breath, recalling those days of posting videos. It was a ballad, but I figured it would be fine. Placing my fingers gently on the strings, I started playing softly. I was a bit anxious, but I concentrated on my playing and my fingers, and I managed to get through the song. The venue fell silent for a moment. Then, a wave of cheers rose, filling the air with deafening applause. From somewhere in the crowd, I even heard people shouting.
It's the guitar prodigy.
But my heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear them, and a sense of exhaustion washed over me. Once we finished packing up the instruments, Julie and I decided to check out the after-party we were invited to. During the gathering, they asked about my experience with guitar, and Noah even encouraged me to join the band. But it was all just friendly talk over drinks. I brushed it off as polite conversation, and by the next day, life had returned to normal.
Jessica, check this out.
For a few days, I was enjoying some peace and quiet. As usual, I was preparing for the cafe to open, but Julie, who'd been repairing some instruments, suddenly rushed over, looking pale.
What's wrong?
Without a word, Julie thrust her phone screen in front of me. In a viral post, there was a photo of the famous rock band from the other night, alongside a picture of me playing guitar backstage.
What is this?
We'd agreed that I wouldn't show my face, yet someone on the staff must have taken a photo secretly. It had spread across social media. The caption read, "The identity of the guitar prodigy revealed," and although it wasn't posted by the original photographer, Julie explained that the image had gone viral. Some people who shared the post even mentioned where I worked, along with the image of my face.
Why would they just do that without even asking me?
I was furious that someone had shared my information without permission, but now that it had spread, there was nothing I could do.
Oh my God. What if your mom finds out?
Julie had known since the day after the concert about my background and why I'd run away from home, so she seemed worried that my mother might come to take me back now that I'd been exposed.
No, I don't think she'll find out. But what about your cafe? Now, everyone knows about this place.
I knew my mother wasn't tech-savvy or familiar with social media, so I felt fairly safe. I was more worried about the store. Looking at the numbers, it seemed that quite a few people had shared the photo. The truth was, I had definitely caused trouble for the store.
The store's fine. Actually, this might even boost our popularity. But I'm worried that you might end up attracting a lot of curious attention because of it, Jessica.
Julie was genuinely concerned about me, frantically patting my back and holding my hands, clearly flustered.
I'll be all right.
Seeing Julie so anxious was somehow amusing, and I couldn't help but smile. When I smiled, Julie seemed to relax a bit, returning a slightly strained smile. Just as she predicted, more customers began visiting the store. Some came specifically wanting to see me, but the fact that we'd lent instruments to a famous rock band seemed to attract more attention. As a result, the store became very lively, and business improved significantly. Occasionally, people from the music industry or popular video creators visited, asking me to collaborate or offering me opportunities in the field, but not wanting to draw more attention, I turned them all down. Months passed, and about 2 months later,
Jessica.
as I was going about my usual work in the store, helping various customers, a familiar voice suddenly sounded from behind me, making my heart jump. I felt my body tense up to the point where I couldn't move.
I've been so worried about you. Come on, we're going home.
From the tone and voice, I immediately recognized who it was. It was unmistakably my mother. Without turning around, I remained frozen in place. My mother grabbed my hand, pulling me forcefully. The sudden tug made me stumble backward, right in front of the other customers.
What are you doing? Being so clumsy? Stand up.
With my fall, everyone, even those not paying attention before, turned their gaze toward us, watching my mother. Unable to bear the attention, she grabbed my hand again, yanking me upward, and I instinctively stood.
You, of all people, a useless daughter, drawing so much attention. I was mortified when I heard from our neighbors. Stop embarrassing me like this.
She let go of my hand with a sharp glare, leaning in to hiss in my ear.
Excuse me, is there a problem here?
Noticing the commotion, Julie appeared from the back of the store, quickly stepping between my mother and me. My mother glanced at Julie, putting on a sweet smile.
No, nothing at all. Come, Jessica, let's go.
She pushed past Julie, grabbing my hand to pull me again, only to be immediately stopped by Julie.
Excuse me, are you Jessica's mother?
Yes, I am.
If you wouldn't mind, we do have other customers here, so perhaps we could continue this conversation later.
Trying to defuse the situation, Julie's calm words seemed to irritate my mother, wiping the smile off her face and leaving her looking angry.
This has nothing to do with you. Are you the one who had Jessica perform with those disgraceful people?
What?
My mother released my hand, stepping closer to Julie, and we began drawing even more attention, with people whispering as they looked our way. Realizing things were getting out of hand, I forced myself to suppress my trembling and mustered a smile to calm things down.
Mom, let's go home.
Jessica,
Just as I thought that returning with her would settle everything, I heard a loud voice calling my name from the cafe area. The voice turned everyone's attention toward its source. When I looked over, there was Noah, the lead vocalist of the rock band I'd performed with unexpectedly, waving at me with a big smile. Both Julie and I froze in shock, not understanding why Noah was there. For a moment, I forgot my mother's presence, overwhelmed by confusion. The cafe fell silent for a moment, but as soon as everyone recognized Noah, the place erupted with screams. The customers all stood and rushed over to him, while my mother, stunned, stood there, bewildered.
What's going on?
My mother looked completely lost, but then, snapping back to her senses, she grabbed my hand and tried to lead me out of the cafe. I didn't resist and was about to follow her out, but with Noah and his fans filling the entrance, we couldn't move.
oh Jessica, wait, excuse me everyone.
Noah called out, realizing I was nearby. He began making his way toward me, pushing through the crowd of fans. Fans, thrilled to see the guitar prodigy next to Noah, pulled out their phones and started taking pictures without permission.
Stop that. Don't take photos.
My mother, furious at being photographed, yelled at the fans with a face like a demon, but they paid her no mind.
Can't you do something about this, Jessica?
She spoke, visibly disturbed by the crowd's indifference, seeking my assistance. However, I realized that asking them to cease would be futile, so I remained silent, looking down.
Finally, I found you. Jessica, we've scheduled another concert in the US. I came here to check out the venue. Would you join us again? I'll introduce you to our bassist this time.
Despite the chaos, Noah spoke to me as if it were just the two of us, unaffected by everything happening around us. He was inviting me to play with them again. I wanted to jump up and accept, but with my mother next to me, it felt impossible. Realizing from our conversation that Noah was the person who had inspired me to play guitar, my mother stepped between us, giving him a fierce look. Noah, taken aback by her intensity, tilted his head curiously but showed no sign of fear.
And who are you? Are you by any chance managing Jessica?
To Noah, unaware of the full situation, it must have looked that way.
I'm not her manager. I'm her mother. So you're the one who made my daughter play guitar, showing such awful performances to the world. It's disgraceful. I won't let her play guitar ever again.
Ignoring Noah's friendly expression, she screamed at him, leaning in so close it seemed like she might spit in his face.
Awful? That guitar playing? You must be deaf.
I thought Noah might be silenced by my mother's outburst, but instead, his expression turned serious, and he stared at her with a steely gaze. Both my mother and I were startled by his sudden shift, but Noah continued to glare at her, unblinking.
Yes, that awful guitar playing. It's humiliating. I'm ashamed of her. I can't believe I wasted my time teaching this useless girl music.
But my mother, undaunted by Noah's presence, continued shouting.
I don't understand what you're ashamed of. Look around, she has all these fans here supporting her, not recognizing Jessica's talent. That sounds more like incompetence on your part.
At Noah's words, the surrounding fans voiced their agreement, shouting, "Yeah." Some even held up their phones, recording the whole exchange. Noticing this, my mother bit her lip, swallowing her words.
Jessica, we're leaving.
Without responding to Noah, she grabbed my hand and pulled me again. As if to counter my mother's grip, Noah grabbed my other hand.
Jessica, are you okay with this? If you leave now, you'll never be able to play guitar again. You don't have to be bound by a mother who doesn't understand you.
Noah was doing his best to stop me, his voice filled with concern, and his words brought warmth to my eyes.
No, Mom, I'm sorry. I want to play guitar.
At those words, my mother's grip loosened, and she looked at me. I couldn't bear to look at her, fearing the expression she might have, so I kept my gaze down. I was sure she'd start yelling, maybe even raise her bag to hit me. The fear surged, making my whole body tremble. But instead of yelling, she released my hand and shouted,
Do as you please. You're no longer my daughter. Don't ever set foot in my house again.
Then she stormed off. Noah, the surrounding fans, and Julie all seemed relieved that I hadn't been dragged away, but I was left with a lingering, bittersweet feeling. I have always harbored the hope that, someday, my mother and I might reconcile and perhaps even play music together, violin and guitar. The idea alone gave me a tight feeling in my chest. To distract myself from the thoughts of my mother, I focused intently on practicing with Noah and the others in preparation for the upcoming concert. One day, I received a message from my father, telling me he and my mother had decided to get divorced. Since he had been living overseas, he was unaware of what was happening between my mother and me. A friend who knew my mother had seen the video of our argument, which had gone viral on social media, and passed it on to him. After talking things over with my mother, they agreed to divorce. My father apologized to me multiple times, but I reassured him that I didn't blame him. I shared my feeling of luck having a father who was a pianist, collaborating with musicians worldwide. He chuckled and said that when he returns to the US, we should play together. Motivated by that, I decided to dedicate more time to practicing my guitar skills so that when I play alongside my father, I will achieve a standard that I can be proud of. Before that, there was the upcoming concert featuring Noah and the band. I would be lying if I said my mother's absence didn't weigh on my mind, but for now, I decided to focus solely on what lay before me. I aspire for the day when my mother will notice the improvement in my guitar skills. That's my wish.